Alright guys, welcome to part 2. This is now what I'm calling the arranging clips section. We have, if you see over here, have now gone through all of our individual clips all the way down, hundreds and hundreds of them sometimes. Definitely the most time consuming, tedious process, having to literally sometimes rewatch your entire collection of clips. This might be from a full weekend. Right now I got my Boots and Hearts video loaded up, so that's a 3-day festival of clips after clips after clips. This is the section that most people don't understand editors have to go through. They assume we're just always cutting and piecing, our final artwork together. When in reality, this gruesome process is going through every clip, finding the best of the best, and finally making it into a long sequence. As you can see here, from this project is a roughly 30-minute timeline of just super rough clips laid out. The sense of accomplishment of knowing you've gotten through all your rough clips and you're now sitting in a timeline looking at everything you might eventually use is a pretty good feeling. So at this point, I always remind everyone to just chill out, save your project, get up, walk away, let your brain reset, and come back into it with a fresh mind as we get going. Down here you can see I've duplicated the same track over and over and over again. I usually do this as a tactic. Again, I reminded you guys you're going to probably know the song you're going to use before you get into doing all this stuff. This is just a random song I picked. Right, whatever it's going to be, it's a song. As I'm out in no man's land here, 15 minutes in, I'm going to want to still hear that song. So when I randomly seek footage, I hear the tempo, the pace, and the heavy beats of the song, because you never know when something might give you a good idea. When you see a drop line up to a clip, it might be something you want to store on a piece of paper as a note for later to actually put into your final cut. So now, copying that song all the way through, I have music when I feel like it to go anywhere I want, hear that same beat, and get everything going. Okay, and then I'm going to start talking about the waveforms inside our MP3s, which is loaded up here. In more detail and in terms of a fingerprint for video editing and how you can look at a waveform to try to start piecing together how your final project will come together. And I feel like this is a big important thing that a lot of people miss out on. So we're going to look into it. I can't remind you guys enough that the song is absolutely going to dictate everything about your final video edit. It's going to dictate the pace, dictate the amount of cuts, dictate the speed of cuts, the speed of the footage sometimes maybe. It's everything. It's the spine, the backbone of your video edit. And inside that, more body parts. We're going to talk about the waveform as being a fingerprint. So inside this waveform, without, to naked eye and haven't seen these before, haven't looked at them, this just looks like a big jargon jumbled series of spikes. But you actually have your giveaways of pace, tempo, intros to songs, outros, potential spots to splice a track if you need to splice this track to make it longer. Most of my clips are always longer than the actual MP3 that I had in the first place. So there's a series of splicing you do, try to make it undetectable to the human ear, to make this just a nice fluid longer clip. So when I mentioned fingerprint, this is literally something you can, if you get good at, I, with confidence, could probably mute this track and just stare at the waveform, edit to it, and come out with a pretty decent piece in the end. If you just look at me as I scan through this with horrible loud volume, you can see here, I'll just break it down. You clearly have an introduction of buildup of spikes. You got one good pop. It goes into its first body component. There's a hard drop here. That could be maybe for a scene change. Another hard section of loud, something could be all your action. And then there's a clear lull. Goes into the middle of the song. This could be developmental footage for later. Another rise, another hard, strong build to a hard drop. And then a second body. If I was doing this to Boots and Hearts, I could literally look at this as, let's say, intro to the event, first night, first morning, second day, all the action, maybe all the concerts, segue footage, etc., etc. It goes on forever. And after we've decided we have our song, we're going to get into the actual structure of editing and how to arrange clips. And I've worked this down into just a series of ABCDs, ABAs, ABCs. I'll explain that as we get going here. Okay guys, I just jumped onto Soundcloud for a sec here. This is my buddy Ricardo Garcia's page. He was the guy that gave me the Plastic Joker mix. That was to my 365 Days of Awesome #2 that did really well. And oftentimes he sends me new tracks for me to use, and you can see them all laying here in waveform format. So as good as some of his mixes are, which are awesome, I can simply look at the waveform and decide if that's going to be a good storytelling track for me to use. And you can just see here, like example, this part, tons of spikes up and downs. It's probably going to be a good track to use for big intro. More or less it's going up and down the whole time, so you're seeing a lot of tempo changes, beat changes. Something like this, you're going to get jinxed. I actually might have used this one. You can see that for the most part, after about a minute in, it's just going to be the same series of spikes all the way across. So I could see in terms of a viewer watching the video, they might be hearing the same beat and get bored of the track, versus right above it, trying is a lot of up and down, series of spikes that'd be good to edit to, dips, another rise, a dip, and then a big hard finish. So you get into the art of understanding the fingerprint of a waveform in terms of potential good music to use. I just want to stick that in there because I feel like not too many people would do it in that sense, and it becomes very important for editing. Okay. All right, so we understand now that waveforms could be fingerprints, and now we're going to talk about structure of arranging clips on your timeline to tell a story to end up being your final piece of the final cut of your edit. So I describe this again, like I always mention, like writing an essay. Only time I actually failed an essay in school was when I didn't give two craps for the structure of it. I literally just started writing away, and brain got carried away. Ended up being a real crap essay. Had no structure, no throwback, no reference. No, nothing. The teacher knew I slacked and called me out for it, maybe do it again, and I did it properly. It ended up being pretty good. So you could take that as your timeline here. When you do a sequence rough and you've gone through everything in order and just thrown it all in order onto the timeline, again, we're dealing with this big, long mess of clips. This would basically be like an essay reading through with no structure. So you're going to want to find a way to tell a story within the piece. And, you know, sometimes at the easiest, it might actually be something you're just going to run through. I'd say 90% of the time, it's something that mainly runs through in an A, B, C, D, E, F, G format where content's just happening as you see it. If this is a 3-day music festival up here, it probably would naturally run from the time we got there to the time we got off. But there might be little mini segments, like at the beginning here. I've taken parts from everything and moved it to the beginning to be a best of the best kind of like mini intro opener that might act as your intro paragraph to an essay in the same sense. So I won't move too much around the screen, but the few structures I wrote down in terms of editing is an AAAA, BBBB, CCCC, DDDD format is, like I just explained, a full, you know, day 1 to day 3. You're just seeing the clips as they happen. There's nothing out of order. Pretty easy to do. Everything's good. Otherwise, I got an AB, 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 and that might be juxtaposition where you're taking, you know, two events. What do we got here as an example? I should prepare myself for examples here. AB, AB would be the example of just jumping back and forth between something. You could even call that two different cameras. You're jumping between camera 1, camera 2, camera 1, camera 2. So suddenly needing required structure there. You have your ABC, ABC. Again, it's kind of doing the same thing, getting the best of all three and bundling it together so the brain is seeing visuals jump all over the place. And I know I have a million examples of this, so I'm probably going to find them and put them up on screen for you. And I already mentioned the multiple cameras. So I would call that A1A2A3. It's going to be the same content. Here we have a bunch of slip and slide. Okay, we had two cameras going. So you'd have the same slip and slide happening. You get the same guy, same clip running between A1, A2, A3s. And then references on my multiple timelines finally. Timeline 1, V1 down here, give you some more space to see it, is where I just put everything all the time. When I do my super rough, everything is in just one big line across the bottom. So my main way to break up timeline, once you're trying to, again, we're working towards the final piece, is this is kind of like all my footage. Up here, I usually call it the best of the best, and then up top would be like a triple tier best of the best, or sometimes I've done, especially for 365 Days of Awesome video, It would be all my clips down in number 1 up to, I would call faces, and then places, and then maybe high fives, getting more and more selective. So when you look through, and I know I want my faces or places, I can literally just select track 3, cut them all out of there, move them over, paste them again, bulk them together, right? And then I know super quick, I've grabbed all my awesome, whatever that would be, and they're all bundled, so I can start working between that and that. So what I've done at the beginning here is made a best of the best. So let's jump to clip cut down. So here's kind of my opener with jumping back and forth between the best of the best of the best. So in sequence 1, I would have gone through the whole timeline, and I have dragged clips up to timeline 3, selected them all, re-edited them, and then brought them down into the beginning of my track. And up here V4, I have nothing on it except for just one clip of my friend's family dog Oakley, who's passed on. But knowing he passed on, I want to do a little mini tribute at the end of my 365 Days of Awesome video. And I have the same clip loaded up here. You can see it's my now cut down 7-minute version. Oakley here's at the very end. I did a little, once the music faded out, a little rest in peace Oakley clip, faded off into the sun. I knew that'd be a really good secret ending to the video. So at the very beginning, going through all of my folders here of all my clips, when I finally stumbled across that summer weekend of Oakley and us in the boat during sundown, instead of losing it into my bottom 1 timeline, I threw, track, I threw that clip immediately up into track 4. So going back over it all later on, I knew I could just grab that, control copy it, and paste it into the end down here. Right, and then I brought it back into the end so I didn't forget about it. Again, you might get a good idea, but over the hundreds of editing decisions you do, you might lose that idea. Always helpful to keep paper in front of you, make jot notes of clips you certainly want to use, anything you want. But just wanted to show you that, how that's very helpful. Putting clips up to track 4 so they're easy to find for your final cut down. Into the next video, we're going to be talking about the actual cut down, working more towards your final piece, where we actually zoom in and worry about what the waveform is doing and what the clips are doing. So we're going to be worrying about actual cuts, trying to shave all these clips down to form an inevitable cut down final form video there.